Yes, it's mine. Who's sharing a screen?
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. A very warm welcome to all of you from the European Training Foundation in Turin, in Italy. My name is Liia Kaarlõpp, and I'm very happy to welcome you in our seminar on the role of teachers in green and digital transition, the contribution of social dialogue. This seminar is organized by the ETF in cooperation with the European Trade Union Committee of Education in the framework of the Swedish presidency of the Council of European Union and in the context of the European Year of Skills. Welcome. As said, my name is Liia Kaarlõpp and I am part of the ETF Governance and Quality Assurance Program, and I will be your host today. To start off, I would like to give a word to Hugues Mussy, who is Head of Systems Performance and Assessment Unit of the ETF, for some opening words. So please, over to you, Hugues.
Good morning. Thank you, Liia. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. And so again, I would like to welcome you to this event, which, as Liia just said, is organized by the ETF in cooperation with ITUS and in the framework of the Swedish presidency of the Council of the European Union. As part of ETF's work on social dialogue, as some of you might know, in the partner countries of the EU that we work with, today we would like to reflect with you on the contribution that teachers, and in particularly teachers in VET, vocational and education and training, have and can make on the capacity and ability of education system to successfully adapt to digital and green transitions that are high on the European agenda, but also worldwide. The teaching profession, as you know very well, is recognized everywhere as having a key role in achieving this transition. And then an ongoing dialogue between all education stakeholders, including, of course, teachers, is necessary to identify initiatives, practices that best suit each context to succeed in these twin transitions. And this approach of broad dialogue is at the heart of GLAD, which is our governance, learning, action, and dialogues initiatives here at ETF to discuss a broad range of governance issues and challenges. So today, in this perspective and in this context, we invited you to discuss and exchange on the broad needs of VET teachers at large, of VET teacher development in partner countries in meeting these particular challenges. And we will build on lessons learned through various experiences and in various settings in partner countries and in the European Union. So thank you again. Without further ado, let's dive into the content of our seminar. Thanks again for your participation, and I wish you all a very fruitful seminar. So Liia.
Yeah, thank you, Hugues. Thank you very much. And as I have noted that in the chat also we have many greetings from really countries all over the world. We have Kazakhstan, Armenia, Uzbekistan, Albania. So just to mention a few of them. And now I would like to pass over to Cristina Pontis, she's joining us from the Swedish Ministry of Education and Research, where she is Deputy Director for Upper Secondary and Adult Education and Training. Please, Christina.
Thank you, Leah, and good morning or good afternoon to all participants. I could in many ways echo what Hugh just said. More than 3 months have passed since Sweden took over the baton from the Czech Republic, and we are now halfway through the Swedish presidency. The priorities of the Swedish presidency of the Council of the European Union were presented in December last year and can be summarized in 4 points. It's security, competitiveness, green and energy transitions, and the democratic values and the rule of law. The theme of today's seminars, also already has been said, is the role of teachers in green and digital transition, touches upon many of these priorities. The global climate challenge requires a global response. The transition to a resource-efficient, fossil-free future will require major investments in innovative industries that can translate the best ideas and innovations into functional solutions. The green and digital transition and the importance of education and training, and in vocational education and training in particular, and the efforts to achieve it cannot be emphasized enough. Vocational education and trainers with adult learning play key roles in providing young and adults, women and men, the skills and competences they need. Teachers or trainers, as has been already mentioned, have a crucial role to play in the green and digital transition by equipping learners with up-to-date vocational, technical, and other skills and competences. In this context, supporting continual professional development opportunities and attracting qualified teachers and trainers is essential. Today's seminar will also connect to the European Year of Skills and is focused on matching skills to the needs of the labour market, a theme that is of high priority for many countries, including Sweden. I look forward, after our screen break, to share with you some of the results of these first months of the Swedish presidency, but even more to hear of the work done in some of the ETF partner countries. I hope that the seminar will give you a taste of the issues and different perspectives on the role of teachers in the twin transition. Thank you for these first words.
Thank you very much, Christina. So welcome to everyone. And before I forgot to mention that today we also have interpretations into French and Russian. So please, if you need, the bottom is just with the word icon at the bottom of your screen. In the first session, we are going to look at the contribution that teachers, in particular in vocational education and training sector, can make to the ability of the education systems to successfully adapt to digitalization and sustainability, and how they can access the experiences of the European Union. We will discuss the broad needs of VET teachers development created by the transition towards more digital and green. Also, of course, our focus is on the partner countries. The first topic is about the professional development needs and opportunities for VET teachers in green and digital transitions. And in addressing this topic, we will hear from 4 speakers: Julian Stanley, Borka Visnic, Maria Alukishvili, and Susanne Nielsen. Each of them will speak approximately for 5-6 minutes, and after that we will have time for open discussion. I will now give floor to Julian Stanley. Julian is ETF Senior Human Capital Development Expert focusing on innovative teaching and learning. He is leading ETF's work to develop a self-assessment tool for centers of vocational excellence on behalf of the European Commission. Julian has worked on teacher development policies at European level and in many of European partner countries. And he also coordinated ETF's international survey into vocational teachers involving 9 countries, and has supported professional development at the levels of policy and practice. Please, Julian, over to you.
Thank you very much, Leah, for that kind introduction. And thank you for inviting me to speak to you all today at this event. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity. I've always worked on professional development, but thinking now about professional development in the context of the twin transition is a real challenge, and something which I'm very keen to be able to contribute to. I've called my presentation Professional Development in Transition for the Green Transition, because in my view, we're not there yet. In my view, we're only learning now how to change professional development to make it fit to do this job. And I'm going to try and show you in my presentation of how we're getting there rather than, where we want to get to. Just to remind you of where we came to, and a reminder that a lot of the pressure for the green transition is bottom up. Okay, I think it's important to remember that, not top down. That there's an urgent need for the green transition, but there's an uncertainty and there's a context dependence about which technologies, which sectors should be targeted. So there's quite a lot of unknowns, I would say. We know that the urgency and the valorization for the green transition is perhaps driven more by young learners than by teachers, but nevertheless, there's a need to upskill adults as well as the young, employed and unemployed. That historically, I think it's fair to say that vocational education and training has been trained to be responsive to the needs of employers in the labour market. I mean, a lot of work has gone on in the last 10, 15 years to make training responsive, but it does seem now, I think, that some of the messages which have been sent from employers in the labour market have indeed been the wrong messages. In other words, we haven't always been getting the skills and the technologies right, ones which are kind to our planet and which make for our continued future on this planet. Therefore, I think it's clear that additional signals are needed. We don't just want the conventional signals from the labour market, and probably also from additional stakeholders, not perhaps from the usual suspects. We know now we have high-level international agreements, national ones, international ones, about carbon reduction, about moving towards a sustainable future. But my point here is that these are not yet operationalized at the level of educational governance, nor at district nor at institutional levels. So there's a gap between the kind of frameworks which we have and what is needed for institutions such as schools and colleges and training centres to actually meet those. My other point is that I think there's a diversity of initiatives going on which relate to opportunity, to motivation and resources. Sorry, is there a problem? Sorry, there's an interruption there. If you can turn off your microphone, please, if that's possible. That there's a diversity of initiatives, but I don't see that the transition towards professional development for the green transition can be uniform, or indeed can be centrally orchestrated. I think it's going to depend upon what is available and what can be done in particular situations. So very briefly, what are the kind of competencies which should be addressed? Well, I think obviously knowledge of the work and job processes and skills which are needed, and those which are going to be needed for a greener economy, but also not just skills, but also knowledge. I mean, scientific knowledge, civic knowledge about targets, about the benefits and costs and so forth. Also, I think a capacity to develop curriculum, because I think that teachers can't rely upon given curricula. They're going to have to work to adapt and to change curricula to meet new objectives. And I think we're going to need a capability in teachers, not just in specialist curriculum designers. I think there's going to be need to be further capacity for designing instruction, for making sure that the way in which people learn is linked to the new forms of work and the new skills, and also is linked to working in a collaborative way across environments, as I think that's going to become so important with the new skills and the new kinds of economy that we're going to have. Obviously, a mastery of technologies and materials which are going to change as we move towards a greener economy, and of course, collaboration and networking, because I think so often we find that the existing specialisms where teachers are don't permit them to make the transitions, and therefore they're going to need to work with employers, with other specialist teachers across different disciplines. So who will do the training? Who will be the trainers? Well, again, I think it's important to have a range of different training bodies. And I think perhaps in some systems there's an over-dependence on a limited number of institutions who do teacher training. I think we need to think about teams within schools. We need to think about universities. I think increasingly there are Erasmus projects which are taking the lead in training vocational teachers. I've got up there AgriNext, which is a Erasmus Plus project, which is dedicated to creating curricula and new skills for the green transition. National teacher training agencies, also sector bodies and centres such as the Dutch Water Campus, NGOs, beacon schools, networks and businesses. I think we need an array of different organisations to bring together the different pieces and to seize the opportunities and take advantage of the funding where it exists. Now here is a little example of the kind of way I think that the transition can work and the new skills for teachers can be acquired. This is a plant, I don't know if any of you can guess what it is, but it's actually a plant for recycling refrigeration gas, the kind of fluid which keeps fridges and other refrigeration devices effective, keep it working. Here the story is, and this is in Singapore, there's a new regulation came out which obliged companies to reprocess and reuse the chiller gas. So there was the challenge, a new law, and then that led to a cooperation between the vet provider, in this case Temasek Polytechnic, with the National Environmental Agency. They came together to develop a curriculum to learn how to teach it, and then this course was actually taught jointly by lecturers and industry experts. So it was a particular challenge, and the capacity to meet it was met jointly by industry, by government, and by a vet school coming together to solve that problem. I mean, it's important to say that there's an underpinning capacity in this particular vet school, because all the teachers in it are entitled to 100 hours of professional development a year in order to keep their skills up to the needs of industry and society. So there does need to be these underpinning frameworks to give teachers the capacity to learn and to adapt. So what does this look like? I mean, the way I would summarize it is that we need to sort of think globally. We need to have a strategy in terms of moving towards the national and the international targets for carbon emissions, but we need to act tactically. We need to act where the opportunities arise, where we have the resources. So, for example, starting here, together with like-minded educators and stakeholders, we identify a challenge and an opportunity for the green transition. We look for the relevant practices, we explore with experts and stakeholders. We check against the frameworks and priorities. We review and adapt to our own needs. We trial with our learners and colleagues, and then we share those experiences. So the learning for other teachers will come out of experiments such as the one we've just seen at Temasek Polytechnic in Singapore. To summarize then, the kind of framework we need for professional development, the green transition, teachers and trainers and their managers need to be empowered, be able to take opportunities. They need to work in partnership. They need to learn from one another as they meet these challenges, they encounter problems and they solve them. Professional development should not be general. It should be linked to actual teaching projects, because that's what motivates teachers to learn. That makes it worthwhile for them to actually learn the new things, because they're actually going to teach them and they're confronting a new curriculum. They need to be linked to institutional and territorial targets for emission reduction and for greening. Time and resources need to be made available, but not necessarily generically, but for these particular projects, so that they can move forward and show the way. There needs to be organizational and professional leadership, and I think there are opportunities for trade unions here to lead the way and to show that this is a professional and not just a local imperative. And I think clearly there needs to be coordination about the kind of targets which strategically frame all that we're doing. And I just leave you here with a little picture. On the left, you see a data processing center creating far too much heat. And on the right, you see a swimming pool, which is now heated by all the excess energy, which simultaneously heats the pool, but the pool is also cooling the heat from the energy set from the data processing center. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julian. That was really interesting insight into the subject and what is really the context for teachers' professional development. And from here, we will now have a closer look at two countries, Serbia and Georgia. I will pass floor to Borka Visnic. Borka, she is expert in adult education and continuing professional development. And currently she coordinates international cooperation at the Teachers Union of Serbia. She has worked more than 20 years in the union and has been closely involved in international projects in the region, focusing on professional development of teachers. Please, Borka.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. As you said, I work for 20 years as a professional and in the Teachers Union of Serbia, and this topic is my favorite one in professionally and inside of Teachers Union. I would say only a few words as the time is limited, and this topic is my favorite. I could speak a lot about this, but I will say something about concrete situation and the results in our country. Continuous professional development is an obligation in Serbia. So it means that every teacher in elementary school as well as VAT schools has to have at least 100 credit points in 5 years earned during seminars for continuous professional development to keep a license. Teaching license, but teachers working in VAT schools, they need some additional courses or training as they finish different faculties, graduated, for example, as engineer, economists, and how they become teachers. They need at least 30 credit points of additional pedagogical, methodological knowledge skills to become a teacher. Of course, they have mentors inside schools, and once they receive the license for teachers, they also need courses for professional development. What is problem with this kind of approach? It is regulated by Ministry of Education. So they said you need to have so many seminars, so many events. You participate with accredited seminars. Accreditation is given for 3 years by Institute for Development of Education. And when you have this kind of collecting these credit points, you can say, I will keep my license. But most of these seminars are going out of work time during weekends. Most of them are paid by teachers themselves. In spite, this is according to law, this is an obligation of local community. And we pledged all this time that as it is obligation, it should be realized during working time and to be free for teachers. Only free seminars are those organized by Ministry of Education. For example, as I saw in the two main topics in these seminars are about green transition and digital transition. For example, digital transition was very successfully realized in our country during COVID, when we all transferred to the digital world. And later on, Ministry of Education organized 2 cycles of seminars how to improve pedagogical and didactical value of digital platforms and online lessons. So it was really very successful, and it was during work time and for free. All other seminars should be paid by a teacher, and you don't know if the main criteria, what I choose as a teacher as to participate seminar, is it something to be subject important to improve my work as a teacher, or is it about price? In many cases, this is the price. If it's I can afford, it is something I can pay. But if it's not, it doesn't depend on something we need. So if we say that a whole system should be transferred to some kind of a green transition, or as Julian said, on a way to be in green transition, it should be declared as a priority. As in European Union, green competences are among priorities. So if it's a priority also in professional development of teachers, it should be also declared, and we can expect in the next cycles that more seminars will be with these topics, and more experts from different fields will be engaged as trainers. I can say that we have experience in one of Erasmus Plus project, as we are a partner in the project, but not for VAT teachers, only for primary teachers, Green School. And we during realization of this project, we understood what green competencies are, and we trained 15 teachers in very interesting new methodology how to implement green competencies in work with small children. And we applied also as a partner for next Erasmus Plus project, specifically for VAT teachers, but unfortunately we did not pass in these first cycles. I hope it will be next one specifically about green transition for VAT teachers, and a result is expected to be new content of new seminars for continuous professional development of teachers. For example, in this catalog of accredited seminar, we have 1,500 titles. Among them, only 12 have ecology in content. So if we declared it as one of priorities for next period, it is expected to be more. So we as a teachers union expect to be involved in a discussion about priorities. We tried also to become a provider to prove that we have capacity as social partner, a recognized social partner about different things about education, as also possible provider about content necessary to our teachers. And what is missing? It's missing a knowledge about a law regulation, about stress on work, about gender equality, etc., etc. And we applied and accredited those seminars just to say it is possible to have additional content that teachers need to have to be more sure and self-confident. So we want to say that what we did all these years, we fight for relevant content of seminars, relevant, to be useful for teachers, to be possible to be applicable in their everyday work, to be organized during working time, and to be free of charge. And next, last point, besides this obligation, we found that there is one additional approach to professional development to use internal strengths as external providers. This became a very profitable activity for those providers with not high quality in every case, but there is possibility to use internal strength using mentoring system that exists in most of our countries that participate this seminar today, and to use internal strength to raise awareness and give additional skills during working time inside of schools. But of course, it should be additionally paid. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Borka. It was very interesting to learn about Serbia. And now we would like to hear about the Georgian experience by Marina Alikushvili. Marina, she's Vice President of Educators and Scientists, Free Trade Union of Georgia. And she has significant experience in international projects. Please, Marina.
Hello, everybody. I hope you hear my voice well, right?
Yes.
It's very much pleasure for me to have this opportunity to speak and to share the experience. First of all, I would say that I was listening my other colleagues who started this conversation and emphasizing the role of teachers in, well, let's say, in any type of the transition, especially in the education field, because the union side and the meaning of the social dialogue in this context, let's say. First of all, I want to say that as Borka mentioned, I'm involved in the union movement the last 20 years, and thanks to ETUCE, I'm very much familiar of the especially the VT sector, and I'm also getting very much loved with it, because this is much of the important topic for the development of the country, and especially our country, which is on the pathway to the integration processes of the European Union. ETUCE asked me to share our practices of the, let's say, of this meaning of the social dialogue, and also especially I will emphasize the needs of the to the teachers will have not in VT and what our practices are. That's why we've been invited in this context. I want to emphasize that Educators and Scientists Free Trade Union of Georgia is the member-based organization, and we represent the member-based organization, and we are represented the national-wide organization, and we are the we have the practices of the we established in our country the social dialogue last 10 years, and in this context we've been several times presented our views and also the benefits of the social dialogue, because we are the ones who represent the interests of teachers and also promoting the development of the education system in Georgia. I would emphasize that we are in cooperation with the Ministry of Education and
Marina.
We are much more familiar with the benefits, and also we went through to difficult periods and the phases of the development of our organization competencies as well. Last year, so we say that we as the union are standing, let's say, on two legs. Let's say first, this is the as the union protection of teachers' labor, social, economic rights. And we somehow took this obligation also to promote ourselves and care about our members' professional development, especially in the times of the EU skills and year of skills, and also the development that is now ongoing in the VT sector in Georgia. And there are several achievements also in the VT sector, but the problem stays the attractiveness of the VT sector among the population, let's say. Still, last December, the president of my organization made an overall assessment at the European Commission in the framework of the Eastern Partnership Platform, EU-Georgia 10th platform that took place in Brussels. And we assessed the situation and also made some kinds of findings where we see to strengthen our role in promoting the teachers of the VT sector in different directions. And what I want to emphasize in this context that now Borka was saying about the obligations of the CDP for VT teachers. So we don't have these kinds of systems so far, but my organization has a huge practices of promoting the teachers' professional development, for example, in general education. And we are much involved in this because this is a period when teachers' interests should be presented in a way, and also to fill out the gaps that teachers will say, for example, the development of the professional development that is provided by the government, it's understandable, but there are the topics that, as for example, teacher stress or some gender issues or other topics that also needed to provide it. We have this practice of providing different kinds of topics for the teachers. I want to emphasize that recently there is a new change that also at the school level there is integrated programs for the VT sector in general education, and also we can this sector for our youth more attractive, and also we can provide the teachers readiness of this transition period, especially in this digital and green transition. When I was speaking, I want to speak about this. As you see on my screen, we have these kinds of two directions, and my union has its own teachers professional development center, and we are ourselves developing the professional developing programs, and also some of the training modules in order to provide and also to promote in this, to have the better achievements in any kinds of sector of the education system. As far as for this now, there are the VT providers. Most of them are the state funded, and also the students have the opportunity to get this vocational education for free, but still the problem stays here about the readiness of the private sector, of also because the employment of the young is still low in Georgia. So we see that also the teachers need the support in VT sector, also to lobby the social and economic and legal rights in this, and we have this special opportunities also to in the social dialogue to extend our social dialogue in the VT sector, and also we are ready and open also to share the European trade union practices as well in this context in order to promote the VT sector and also teachers' role in VT sector developments in Georgia. As far for the labor for the working hours it's regulated according to the labor code, and also we are in the process of the studying of this their contracts and also their working hours, and also the sustainability of the teaching professionals in VT sector, and also their qualifications and promotion of, let's say, their qualification, especially in this period when after the COVID, there are different kinds of demands also from the market as well, and also we think that we have the experience also from the ETUCE, their direction and the policy papers and their work at the European Union level, and to institutionalize these European practices in the framework of the social dialogue.
Thank you very much, Marina.
Yeah, thank you. If some questions I can involve.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Now, to complete the picture, my colleague Susanne Nielsen will present the example of greening of vocational education. Susanne, she's ETF expert in human capital development and also country responsible for Ukraine. And she is leading the ETF's Green VET partnership. It's called Greta. So please, over to you, Susanne.
Thank you very much, Leah, for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to share some of the lessons from ETF's Green VET partnership named Greta. And Greta is, of course, a tribute to the Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, but it's also the abbreviation of what we actually do in our Green VET partnership. We are greening responses to excellence through thematic actions. And I'm very pleased meeting you all online. I will try to be very brief in my presentation because I can see we are a little bit behind, and there have been many good points already this morning. So I'll just try and be very brief. Next slide. Just I would like to put in the frame where Greta is implemented. It's implemented in ETF's large global network for excellence that we established in 2020. It's a growing network of now more than 270 VET providers from many different countries. I think counting of today, it's more than 45 different countries. We support VET providers through development partnerships in different domains of importance. And of course, greening is a key domain. And this is where we have Greta supporting greening of VET. Next slide. And greening of VET, so what is that actually? What does that mean? Now we have talked a lot about transition of transitions, and I would add to the complexity that greening of VET is a gradual process. It's about aligning the entire VET system to environmental sustainable principles. So taking both training practices, institutional cultures, the institutions itself of VET, and then align it to the environmental sustainable principles. So here it's important to underline that greening of VET is not just about adding some green subjects to training curriculum, to modules, but looking at the entire system. And that is the reason why we in Greta apply a whole institutional approach where we look at 5 interlinked elements that are important when it comes to ensuring that everything is going in the same direction. So we look at institutions themselves. Are VET providers actually walking their own talking? Is campus greened itself? teachers is a key element, and I'll get back to that. That's the core of my presentation, of course. Teachers are important, but they are actually also the trouble. They are causing barrier for further greening of vet because they lack the skills. I think that's clear now also from the previous presentations we had. Stakeholder involvement is crucial, and I think it's actually due to the speed of change that we are seeing in the two transitions, the digital and green transitions. Skills needs and the way we teach are changing almost day by day. And that's the reason why involvement of different stakeholders and also new kind of stakeholders are so crucial when it comes to the greening of vet. My colleague Julian already named a lot, also saying that we should look beyond the usual suspects. So here, for example, civil society organizations, NGOs have a new momentum actually in the role on greening. Training curriculum, that's of course important, but then aligning the entire activities to green policies and ensuring that there are funding for vet providers to move forward is important. We also heard this morning about the importance of ensuring, of course, funding for teachers' development. That's just one part of the importance for funding. Next slide, please. What I just would like here is now to give a bit of flavor of our findings in Greta, where we have conducted peer reviews among our members. But boiling down to what are the skills or what is required of vet teachers today in response to the green and digital transitions, I would say we could boil it down to three things. Of course, teachers need to have pedagogical skills, and they need to have this up-to-date and ever-changing industry knowledge on the newest technologies and the newest materials and practices, and bring it back to their training. And then equally important is to have a green mindset. I really like the comment we had in the chat earlier from Amin saying, this is also to be included. I fully agree. This is also our experience from Greta. Our participants, vet providers, teachers keep stating the importance of the green mindset so that teachers are the front runners or become the front runners, role models to green concepts in all the activities that are implemented in a vet school. And then, of course, as a third element, taking on board the opportunities and also challenges that the new technologies are providing for a teacher, an ever-changing teaching and learning environment. So actually taking on board, making use of digital technologies. Now moving to the findings in Greta and working with our members in ENE, 4 key findings came out. First of all, and what I find interesting working in a global network is, no matter if you are from a EU country, non-EU country, north, south, east, west, it's similar questions, it's similar challenges, the needs are the same, but of course, it's different systems. And the reason why we can see these similarities is exactly because we are in it together in this transition. Things are happening so fast, there are no answers to it. It's new fields for all vet providers in all different countries. And other finding that we took out of the peer reviews and meeting our members in ENE is that 3 out of 4 vet providers, they report that that teachers lack green skills and expertise to move forward. Boom. That's a challenge. That's a barrier that needs to be tackled in order to drive forward in the greening of vet. On top of that, or adding to that challenge, is actually that vet providers, they cannot wait for the system as such to be clear from the national level with national competency standards. They are actually driving forward with extracurricular activities and already greening the curricula, because this is what is demanded by industry, but also by students. This is an interesting finding where teachers report back students are demanding and even running in front of teachers when it comes to the greening. So that is extra challenges for the teachers. Next slide, please. We also looked in Greta specifically among our members on continuous professional development systems. And here I have listed 3 key findings. First of all, there's no systematic approach at the national level. So it's all fragmented and just used on an ad hoc basis. And it depends down to the vet provider's own strategy and initiative, linking it to a green strategy, hopefully, and for them to see if there are resources to identify the needs of their teachers and then ensure that there's sufficient provision of training possibilities for the teachers. So that is just setting the scene for where to move from, what is actually happening at the level of vet providers. Now in Greta, we looked at practices on what works. I will not go in detail with them because the good news is that we have a Greta report coming up next week. It will be available at the ETF website where you can look more into detail on the various practices. I just would like to take out some impacts on actually what works. It's I'm sure you can nod to that, and it's also linked to what we heard already in the previous presentations. Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration with stakeholders. Super important. It's not new, but we just see it again and again. This is leading to tailored training. Another thing, we have some interesting examples, is that if you involve vet teachers in design of their own continuous training, it increased their motivation. Maybe we can get some of the oldies on board, and it increases participation. And then a third element, we looked at some interesting cases where actually making use of the new technologies for the continuous professional development. So online training, of course, making use of simulators, that increases the impact of the training and the relevance, and actually it can also reduce the cost, which is a problem with the funding. Next slide. This is just trying to wrap up and add on. I think this is more some recommendations that came out of our peer learning sessions with our members in Greta and Ene, that partnerships between vet sector and industry is really a must. This provides the opportunity to promote, improve use of different new technologies, materials, and equipment in the training. And then we discussed a lot among our members the importance actually on offering not only students work-based learning opportunities, but also teachers. They need to be offered work-based learning opportunities. And I think as a last point, we talk a lot about teachers, but maybe the entire role of teachers and what they are is changing. We see more and more examples of so-called hybrid teachers that actually work in parallel between vet institutions and industry, meaning that they can tie better what is provided in the vet schools with the needs of the industry. I think this is what I wanted or had time to share with you. I hope you would visit our website where you can find the Greta report next week. And also I would like to just do a PR for an upcoming seminar we have next week, 26th of April, where we'll be discussing the twin transition, its skills implications with the Confederation of Danish Industries. If you want to join, you could contact us. The program is available at the ETF internet. And if you would like to join, we can provide you with the link, and hope to see you. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you very much, Susanna. It was very interesting to see the results of Greta. And now we have actually 10 minutes for open discussion. So I kindly invite you to speak up, to take a floor by raising your hand or to write in the chat. So we have heard a lot of different inputs, the European experience. Yeah, please, Borka.
I want to say a few words about the reaction of Amin, not green skills only, but also green behavior teacher as role model. I can say about experience from our project, as they say, current project, Green Schools. It's not about only about skills. As you know, competencies are not only skills. It's knowledge and attitudes. So it means it is necessary to change or to explore attitudes of teachers, and if necessary to be changed. And you may know that the changing of attitudes, it's a very hard and long process. So just to change attitudes of others, we should explore our attitudes and to see if we are in the line with this new approach. I would like to add, it's not only about the attitudes of teachers and the role model of teacher. School institutions should be also ecological one, and to have this kind of role to be an example, not only for students, but for a wider community. So it is a very important not to talk only about skills, but competencies as a whole, green competencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Borka. We have also a comment from Agnes Roman from Etuse, and asking, how do you identify wet excellence, and is providing support to wet teachers to the changing needs are elements of excellence? So Susanna, maybe you can give a short
Thanks a lot. Yeah, we work in a network for excellence with centers of vocational excellence. Actually, we have a bit of a problem because there's no one definition on what is vet excellence. I would even say this is again a process towards one major key indicator, which I would say is impact, is the provision of the training relevant for growth, for regional development. This is the reason why we link our work on vocational excellence to the so-called skills ecosystems, which is about aligning training with regional development strategies through cooperation with different stakeholders. And another element in excellence is exactly on how vet providers are engaging with stakeholders. And that is key in the green and digital transition, going back to some of the remarks Julian had, and also that I tried to state, due to the rapid changes, there is this need, for example, for vet providers to have close cooperation with research institutions more than before, maybe also other ways of cooperation with enterprises, because it's a little bit, we are leaning shoulder by shoulder as we go along. Vet providers, industries might not be prepared actually to state what skills they need, because it's changing. It's difficult to formulate and put a wording to it, to turn it into a occupation standard, for example. So it's about the relevance of the training. It's about the way cooperation is done with different stakeholders. And now, actually, I see Julian is writing something, and I wanted to give the ball to you, Julian, because you're actually working on defining that excellence through our self-assessment tool. So Julian, maybe you want
Yeah,
to.
I mean, just to add very briefly, I mean, as I say, I think the gap is a little bit between the high level international and national frameworks on the one hand, and what teachers and schools should be trying to do on the other. And I think there's a bit of a gap there. It's, you know, teachers and schools can't meet global targets by themselves. You know, they need to have their own frameworks and their own their own targets to do. So one of the things we're trying to do in the Excellence Network is to develop a framework, a set of indicators, a set of criteria for the green transition, for the digital transition, which is relevant and contextualized to what schools can do. So it's not beyond them, it's not at a total global level, but it's something which is relevant to them. And also it's something which they can adapt to them, because the framework we're creating can be tailored. They can add indicators, they can take them away, and they can work in a collaborative way to do that. So it's trying to get that intermediate framework there so that they can work together to make progress on these two transitions.
Thank you very much. There's one clarification on the seminar of 26th of April. Maybe Susanna, you can write directly to Ivana.
Yeah, I'll just answer very shortly. Indeed, it will be about involvement of industry. Actually, in that seminar, we start from the industry side. We will be visiting, I will not say the Holy Grail, but we will be visiting some research laboratory on the newest green technologies at the Danish Technological Institute, where we will look into, so what is the future? What are the technologies that industries are asking for? And then we roll back and discuss, so what are the skills implications? So indeed, industry involvement, that's what we are focusing on next week on the 26th of April.
Perfect, thank you very much. Maybe, I mean, seeing that both Borka and Marina, they have a long experience in the trade union and have probably experienced many changes during the last 20 years. Do you see any difference between the change that is happening now, the transition? Is there anything new about, or how would you consider it? Maybe Marina, then Borka. Can you, Borka, step in?
Yes, there is a lot of things changing in the last 20 years. Considering a position of VAT teachers as they are specific now in the position to be in focus in the two main issue, green transition and digitalization, many changes happened in the meantime. About position of VAT teachers, as a trade union, we are constantly taking care about quality of teachers in VAT schools, as this is important for the future of students, as well as the position of students be involved in dual education in the meantime. So we have also not problem, but an issue about trainers inside of companies and their pedagogical and didactical background, as they are under authority of companies and not under authority of Ministry of Education. Their authority is economy chamber. We had programs for trainers inside of companies, as this is important for apprenticeship, as they have also marked from their practical work as mark from subjects inside of a school institution. So we need to take care about the quality of teachers, and in situation where not only in Serbia, but this is situation in whole Europe, that teaching profession is under attack, being under evaluate comparing with similar professions. So it's very hard to expect that somebody, some quality engineer would like to be involved in VAT schools, comparing with a double, triple salary in other companies. So we need to have this kind of soft power to attract people being personally involved in teaching, and give them some kind of possibilities to be recognized inside of institution. What Julian said, when you are asked about something, you will be more motivated. So we need to motivate our teachers in VAT schools to be involved, to participate, to make changes, etc., with a low salary. And this is some kind of mixture of what is your professional satisfaction, or do you expect from education to be wealthy?
Thank you for your reflection, Borka.
Can I intervene?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, last 20 years, no, maybe more, there are lots of changes, but especially in the last maybe 2-3 years, there is a very frequent changes in it. So in any transition, let's say, but any transition, what we care about, and what is our must as the trade union, we care about equality, first of all, but what our role is also to listen to teachers and also not to damage their image, let's say, because we need to consider, we have this practice, for example, in general education, when the reform started, that all damage was made on teaching profession that really damaged the image as a whole. Nowadays, our role in the country, as we are the union who represent teachers' voice, let's say, and especially empower them with the trust. And also, when the teachers are listened, they are empowered and they are feeling more motivated. In another way, there will be lots of fails. We now have lots of practices, how to motivate teachers and make the, for example, teaching a wet sector for teachers more attractive, or also for the students to be more attractive. Therefore, in this context, I will say the real social dialogue really makes changes and also benefits for the whole picture of any transition, especially this very fast transition period in all countries, even in our developing countries, as Georgia is.
Thank you very much, Mari. I think now we have well-deserved a small break from the screen. We break for 10 minutes and we will be back, actually 9 minutes, at 11:15, I mean, 1:15. So please stay with us, but take a little break. Thank you. Thank you. So I respond to Christina that yes, we will share all the presentations with all participants after the seminar. So welcome back to our second session. Maybe not all of us. I hope you are all back to us. So now in the second session, we will look at digitalization and the contribution of Europe's education architecture, doing that by bringing together several experts with different perspectives on the issue of green and digital transition. We will hear from 4 speakers. Firstly, we have a contribution from Cristina Pontis, who will give us an outlook of the European Union in the perspective of the Swedish presidency. Please, Cristina.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you for giving me the floor again. And also for showing the presentation. I think it was Susanna that earlier talked about the different perspectives of the green transition. It's about both stakeholders and the policy level, and I'll be touching mostly on the policy level, both at the EU level and of course from the Swedish presidency perspective. The Swedish. This is the third. You can remain in the. Yeah, thank you, and I'll tell you when to change, Leah. This is the first Swedish presidency, and as others, this is late in the legislative cycle, and we have expect in total to have around 300 files on the table altogether, many of them dealing not only with education, but of course with the greening and the green transition in Europe as a whole. A month ago, the education ministers adopted council conclusions on skills and competence for the green transition, reflecting a common commitment to developing education, training, upskilling and reskilling possibilities for the green transition. And just 2 days ago, if some of you perhaps have already noticed, on the last Tuesday, the Commission presented 2 proposals for Council recommendations to address the digital divide by improving digital skills, teaching and ensuring universal access to inclusive and high quality digital education and training. So both the greening and the digital transition, the twin transition, are high on the EU agenda. And of course, the role of teachers has been emphasized before during this morning and will be emphasized in the future. And before coming back to these files, I want to start with giving you just a short presentation of the Swedish EU presidency priorities in education and training. Next slide, please. As already mentioned, 2023 is the European Year of Skills. The decision has not been taken, but it will do so in the beginning of May. And this will also mark the start of the year. And even though the decision has not been formally taken, the Swedish presidency has and intends to continue to link up with the European Year of Skills and the focus area of matching skill sets to the labour market needs, highlighting how education can contribute to transition and upskilling, and contributing to the discussion on the necessary conditions for both individuals and businesses to be able to obtain the skills needed for the green transition. And of course, teachers are one of those groups. In addition, the presidency will move the work of the European education area forward, for example, regarding mutual recognition of qualifications. The European education area, its agreed framework and its 5 strategic priorities, they constitute the basis for the work and for European cooperation in the area of European education and training, as probably most of you know. The strategic framework intends to cover teaching and training in all contexts and levels, whether formal, non-formal or informal, including, of course, vocational education and training. I will only touch upon and remind us of two of these strategic priorities that are particularly relevant to the theme of the seminar. And those are supporting the green and digital transition through education and training and enhancing competence and motivation in the education profession. Next slide, please. And I know that you will receive the slides afterwards, so I will just touch on this shortly. Starting with the green and digital transition that you know are the core focus of the European Union's agenda for the next decade. And what is emphasized is that the impact it will have, social, economic, and regarding employment, and that without ensuring that all citizens obtain the necessary knowledge, competence, skills, and attitudes to cope with these changes, a socially just transformation will not be possible. Therefore, education and training institutions and also policymakers need to include that green and digital dimension in the development, in the coming development. It's already been mentioned, of course, that some of the concrete issues and actions would include addressing the development of basic and advanced digital skills and competences. It will also involve promoting environmental sustainability perspective across education and training curricula. Next slide, please. In this context, teachers and trainers are essential. Teachers, trainers, educational and pedagogical staff, and education and training leaders. And I think I also want to emphasize the role of training leaders, of school leaders, or the leaders in colleges and so on, at all levels, are at the heart of education and training. To support innovation, quality in education and training, educators must be highly competent and motivated, which requires, of course, a range of professional learning opportunities and support throughout their careers. I think it's been already mentioned by some of the colleagues that, of course, the well-being of teachers and trainers and educational staff is also essential. And, of course, also mentioned by our colleagues from Serbia, the attractiveness of the teaching profession will also be important in the future. The European education area and its strategic framework and priorities have, of course, influenced the priorities of the Swedish presidency. Next slide, please. Based on the Swedish government political priorities and current priorities work on the European agenda for education, the Swedish presidency has narrowed down to a short list of topics that have been brought forward to the Council and that also have influenced the themes and focus of the meetings and education process and the Education Presidency Conference. The bullet points you can see in the slide highlight some of these topics and events. I will just comment on some of those. Firstly, the European education area. Important steps have been taken towards establishing the European education area, but considerable work still remains. The Commission Progress Report towards the achievement of the European education area was published last November last year. Teacher shortages is identified as one of the major challenges representing a serious risk to the quality and equity of education. These shortages are, among other things, due to the aging of teacher workforce in the EU. Almost 40% of the teaching workforce is above 50 years, but also, as mentioned from some of the colleagues before, the perception about the profession's low attractiveness. Therefore, the policy debate of the March Council meeting of Education Ministers was centered around these challenges. Ministers discussed the issue of teacher shortages and in particular the added value for enhanced European cooperation and EU-level actions to attract, upskill and retain teachers and trainees. To give an extra push to the continued work with the European education area, the Swedish presidency has proposed Council conclusions that are now being discussed by the Member States in the Education Committee and are planned to be adopted at the May Council. Secondly, and just to mention it shortly, as I already mentioned, the Swedish presidency will also begin considering both the Council recommendations presented on Tuesday by the Commission. This work will not be finalized during the Swedish presidency, but will be taken forward by our Spanish colleagues. I can't say that I have scrutinized those two recommendations in these past 2 days, but it could be mentioned that one of the proposals aims to promote the necessary structural reforms at national level to enable significant progress in the digital transformation of education and training, based on, among others, building and enhancing partnerships with teachers and influence the social dialogue with teachers. Thirdly, the skills and competence for the green transition. This is a topical issue that relates both to the Swedish political priorities and, of course, to the European agenda, and builds on many things like the European Green Deal, the Council recommendation on learning for the green transition, the Council recommendation on vocational education and training, and of course, the Osnabrück Declaration. That's why the overarching theme for the DCVT meeting, the meeting of Director Generals in vocational education and training, that perhaps some of you partner candidate countries participated in, was the role of VET in providing skills and competences for the green transition to achieve the shift to a modern, resource efficient and competitive economy. Delegates, among other things, discussed how can we assure that teachers and trainees have updated knowledge and skills within the field they teach and train. Following a proposal from the Swedish presidency and that of the discussion among member states, the Council approved conclusions on skills and competences for the green transition, which I already mentioned earlier today. In the conclusions, the Council invites member states, among other things, to engage education and training providers, research organizations, employers, social partners, and other relevant stakeholders in jointly identifying reskilling and upskilling needs for the green transition, and of course also for the digital transition. As this was already mentioned by Susanne and others, the need of really involving different stakeholders and different levels in the education community in the transition. Next slide, please. This is just to highlight, I'm not going to read this, but if you, how the teachers and the role of teachers is mentioned in the Council conclusions. And you can look at this further when you receive the presentation. Next slide, please. Because I would like to finish by mentioning some of the conclusions put forward by the delegates at the DVTT meeting when discussing how we can assure that teachers and trainees have updated knowledge and skills within the field they teach and train. And many of these relate to what both Julian and Susanna and others mentioned during their interventions earlier today. Of course, it's about the government's issue, building the appropriate structures. It was mentioned here in the morning that in some cases, for example, participating in professional development could be compulsory, in some others not. It could also be about if it is compulsory or mandatory for whom? Is it for the VET institutions to offer teachers, or for regions to offer teachers, or is it for teachers to participate in professional development? It could be put in different ways. Of course, it's about involving stakeholders. It was mentioned the role of companies and enterprises, both in the way of participating in the teaching, but also the hybrid role of teachers and trainees. It is was also mentioned in the discussions in the DCVT meeting that even though we usually think of teachers when we talk about professional development, more seldom we include trainers in professional development schemes. And as it was mentioned earlier by I think our Serbian colleague, this is of course crucial, even if we're talking about apprenticeship training and in general in work-based training. And just last, of course, was mentioned, investment is not all, but of course, valuing, for example, involvement in educational activities in career pathways will be important if we are to motivate teachers in participating in professional development activities. Thank you for listening, and this was all for me for the moment.
Thank you very much, Christina. It was very rich input on the Swedish presidency doings. Thank you. And we now move to the European Trade Union Committee of Education, which represents the teachers' unions in 52 countries. And together with Agnes Roman, we will reflect on the future of VET, the role of teachers in the context of green and digital transitions, as is topic of today. Agnes is a senior policy coordinator and has been advising the workers' unions, the European Trade Union Confederation, on lifelong learning and VET policies. Please, Agnes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Really, I would like to be quick on my presentation, but I have a lot of slides and lots of graphs. Apologies for that. What we are doing as the European Trade Union Committee for Education, you can have a look at our website. Indeed, what Leah said, we are representing 127 teacher trade unions in 51 countries, including many of ETF partner countries. And if you are interested in if the teacher union in your country is among our member organization, you can have a look in our website. Besides of our policy work in supporting teachers and teacher trade unions, we have several projects on sustainable environment, on attractiveness of the teaching profession and digitalization and its impact on teachers and the school system. Concerning digital transition, well, we know that it happened one day to the other. The COVID crisis had a huge impact on vocational education and apprenticeship, and the most impact was on apprenticeship, on practical learning. But the transition, which was from one day to the other, was not really so much smooth, because 1 in 4 VET teachers, according to OECD, do not feel confident about using digital technologies. And there is still a huge divide among age of teachers. 76% of young teachers feel confident of using digital technologies in classroom teaching, while around 53–59% of VET teachers who are aged over 60 use technologies in the classroom. This graph is coming from a study which was conducted around the start of the COVID by OECD, UNESCO, and UNICEF. And you can see that around 70% of the countries provided training to teachers, but only around 30% provided additional resources to teachers to access ICT-related trainings, which is a difficult thing when we are talking about that teachers really had to change from one day to the other to learn to teach via online tools. And as I highlighted here in the last point, there were lots of teachers who didn't receive any additional support. They had to struggle themselves. So really, when we are talking about digital and green transitions in vocational schools, we should really not forget about not only expectations from teachers, but how to provide effective support to teachers to face these transitions. The green transition in vocational education and training has been started a little bit more weakly than the digital transition. And really, as colleagues mentioned before, vocational systems started to include environmental topics in training programs. Vocational qualifications started to change because the professions need to use also greener technologies. And in lots of countries, but not in enough countries, social partners were taking initiatives to update existing vocational qualifications, and they were involved in creating new ones. But not in all countries, trade unions are having this role and are involved, which is a problem. Just to have a classroom to see in green is not enough. And I was really happy when I heard the comments and I saw the comments in the chat about attitude change. And I really prepared this presentation because I also have this problem. The Eurobarometer survey of the European Union on climate change, which is a report, it was published last year in April, identifies around 15 actions which any citizens, any person can do to fight against climate change. For example, have recycling waste system in your house, or use electric or hybrid cars, reduce meat consumption, reduce electricity, water, heat consumption, or fix the isolation of the buildings. And according to this report, nearly all Europeans have taken at least one of these 15 actions. But it's not enough, because there is a huge geographical divide of attitude. For example, 16% of people in Romania and in Bulgaria and 10% in Cyprus have not taken any of these actions, compared with 0% in Belgium, Ireland, and Portugal. And this is very important, because indeed, vocational systems alone cannot be responsible of changing attitudes. Changing attitudes of the society is very important. Vocational institutions really need to consider lots of things to adapt to green transition, and it is a management question. It's not only about teaching or changing the curricula and including green skills into qualifications. What are these changes they need to consider? They need to change the buildings to have resource efficiency, renewable energy. For example, how to cut the consumption, heat consumption, water consumption, how to set up solar panels, how to fix the school buildings concerning the isolation, how to improve waste management, but also the sustainability of the equipment of vet workshops and in teaching practices are important. The transport, if vet school is providing transport to the students and teachers, they can consider to have it as a sustainable transport, or even motivating the students and teachers to have carpooling, to share a car in the morning and in the afternoon. Changing the classrooms and the whole institution to have more green and blue spaces are very important, but teaching outdoors is so much lacking in many other countries. And in Nordic countries, it's very highly developed, but in many other countries, it's not. And in order to really teach the people, and specifically the students, about sustainability, they need to feel responsible for the nature and need to be in the nature. But the vet institutions also need to change about the consumptions and the meal offers, for example, in the canteens of the schools, for example, using less meat. Can they do it alone? No. It's very important that national environmental strategies are closely linked to education strategies. For example, if this is a case in France, financing to vocational education to have these changes, to update the buildings and infrastructures, to update the trainings of the teachers, the initial continuous developments are very important. But collaboration and cooperation among the vet school actors are very important, because the top-down decision will not reach the required solution. School leaders, teachers, school admin staff, students, and parents, they need to find out a solution. They need to design jointly, cooperatively, a solution in order to have a good implementation of this such a digital and green transition. We did a couple of years ago a project, and we discussed about what is the problem concerning access of teacher training. And our member organizations from all around Europe reported the same problems. Inadequate access to professional development. Teachers often undertake professional development in their own time and their own expense. The trainings are sometimes poor quality and inappropriate, meaning useless. And unfortunately, there is an inefficient public investment still in education. Education systems are still suffering from the 2008 economic and financial crisis. No, there is another crisis following the war. And all of these have a huge impact on salaries, working conditions, health and safety of vet teachers, and access to quality teacher training. According to OECD, vocational teachers face lots of barriers to access professional development. Around 60% face access to training due to conflicts of the work schedules, or there are no incentives, or the trainings are too expensive, and most importantly, unfortunately, lack of employer support. But there are more broader changes that teachers are facing, which really need to be tackled. For example, in OECD countries, vet teachers earn 8% less than general education teachers. They have more temporary contracts than the general education teachers, face higher workload, poor management in the institution, and lack of career development options, which has a huge impact on the satisfaction and really attractiveness of good teachers to vocational systems. And as it was mentioned earlier, shortages of vet teachers are really important and very big problem in many, many countries around the globe. As the colleague from the Swedish presidency said, indeed, the European Commission Education Training Monitor was published in December, highlighting the most important problem, teacher shortage in the European Union. And OECD, as you can see in this graph, also said that vet teachers are aging and there are more older vet teachers in vocational education and teachers than in general education, as you can see in the diagram. Really, my last slide, what can be the solutions? Digital and green transitions of vet systems and vet institutions could be achieved via a holistic approach. It's very important that countries, policies on environment, economic policies, and education strategies are closely linked. Top-down approach is not enough. Democratic governance is very important at school level and effective social dialogue with teacher trade unions. Generally, vocational education and training should be made more attractive, but also the vet teachers profession should be made more attractive. And instead of always asking what the teacher should do, we should also ask what kind of support we can provide to teachers. And this includes decent salary, working conditions, and quality of trainings. Last year, our member organizations discussed a policy paper where we defined 10 key points, 10 key demands, how to attract teachers to the teaching profession. And as you can see, it includes professional autonomy, collegial leadership, decent salary, working conditions, defined workload and working hours, retention and recruitment practices, quality, inclusive, initial and continuous professional development, but also equality and diversity of the teaching workforce is important, and to commitment on social dialogue, but very importantly, empower the teaching profession. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Agnes. So the issue of attractiveness of the teacher's profession, as well as the importance of school management, it has been really underlined practically across all presentations. Now, my colleague Alessandro Proibito will share with us some facts and findings, lessons from the Selfie tool in understanding digital trends in partner countries, and actually he will highlight on the power of self-reflection. Alessandro is ETF senior human capital development expert focusing on policies and practices for development of digital skills and competencies, the use of digital technology in education and training. Please, Alessandro.
Thank you, Leah, for an introduction, and good morning or good afternoon to all participants of today's event. I'm very glad to be here to this important event about the role of teachers in this digital transition and green transition. It was already highlighted how the digital transition is representing a challenge for educational organization, for vet institute, and as well for individual teachers. What I'm going to present today is indeed what ETF has done to support the EU tools Selfie. They are self-reflection tools developed by the European Commission, the trends that we observed in partner countries, and what can we learn about this. And but if we want to talk about self-reflection tools, it's important to go beyond what is behind and why it is so much important, the self-reflection concept. Let me say that self-reflection is a concept with deep roots in philosophy and cognitive science. And it's very important for each of us, for each teacher, to reflect on and evaluate our own actions. My colleague Julian Stanley, when referring about what CPD should do, is increasingly important to offer skill for designing instructions. And this is something that we can, and what to understand what CPD should offer, what the union and the social dialogue what role could have, is important to start from the needs analysis. And we have to think about to the self-reflection and self-evaluation as a process to look back to what we have done in a specific and situated context, looking at us as an object and as a subject, to be self-aware on how my lesson was delivered, what was achieved, was matching the learning outcome expected or not. And this is important for our personal growth at group and the individual level, I would say, in both dimensions. And this is what is behind the EU tools for self-reflection. The first one we have promoted with very good success story in partner country is Selfie. And this is about the digital capacity of the schools, because the digital transition is about the skills that the VET Institute is providing, digital skills and non-digital skills, of course, but it's about the capacity of the school in a specific context for a specific VET specialization. How can I make the best use? And Selfie is based on the self-reflection concept, is a collective exercise involving school leaders, teachers, and students. And the anonymity of the exercise is, there are many good points about Selfie, but I would stress the anonymity. When we do a self-reflection, a genuine self-reflection, it's important that we are protected. And therefore, the anonymity is a good way to critically review and to be keen to change my skill and improve my skills, my knowledge and attitude. There is another important tool that has been launched more recently, and it's a Selfie for teachers. This is about, let's say, is an individual exercise. It's for each teacher to really reflect on their own competencies, digital competencies, and it's therefore a good way at individual level to see how to move forward in this respect. Now, this is a slide where I would like to give an overview. It has been very successful, Selfie, I would say, in partner countries. We have many good examples. And just to highlight that both in the Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership has been used. Here I'm referring to the overall progress. You can see the legend in the corner about the use of Selfie. And the Selfie for War-Based Learning, which is a specific version of Selfie that is involving in company trainers as well. And as well, Edu stays for Selfie for Teachers, where has been piloted to different extent. Why it is important to me, and it was successful in developing and transition country, is because it's very much bottom-up. It's based on participatory approaches. It's giving the voice to all the school as a community, including the students, should not be underestimated. If we want to prepare for the digital, for a digital world, of course, students should have a voice on how the school is functioning, how the skills are provided. We might have very good hints from their fresh mind. Okay, so, but just to give an overview on the European neighborhood countries, the progress of where we are. Now, I want to stick to the time I have, so I want just to share some lessons with you that we experience as ETF implementing selfie in partner countries. So it's, of course, was already mentioned in previous interventions that the digital education is a reality. It's not something about the future, it's now. And it's very, very important to take into account these elements, even with low-tech solution. Even with low-tech, how we can connect the different learning environments. Because we mentioned that it's also a matter of engaging the employers, NGOs, Erasmus. And digital technology offer new and unprecedented opportunity to bring in a super expert, NGOs, Erasmus project implementers. It's offered new opportunity that we should really reflect on how to take on board. So, but what I wanted to highlight in my lesson, one of the lessons is that really selfie is useful based on our experience, because offer an open, a critical review of practices in a situated solution. We have to think global, but we have to be affecting locally. So it's very important that we understand very much our context and we design a tailored solution. Self-reflection allows to do this or support this. And it's important to, I would not underestimate the can-do attitude, because if I ask you, to any of you that are participating, what do you think about something? I mean, you are engaged, you are really, you can change your attitude. And you might be more keen to make experimentation with digital pedagogy, for example. And therefore, we are in that way supporting innovation overall and the green transition. As an educational organization, as a community, how we do we use less paper? Do we use less, we are more green in our behavior, in the way we teach and learn? So it's quite an interesting process that we are boosting. But there is an ecosystem that the system stakeholder has to provide, because I quite believe that the bottom-up approaches are nowadays innovative and modern to make change happening and to have effective changes. Nonetheless, the system dimension has to create the context and enabling ecosystem to move ahead. Another important, this is ETF is working in close collaboration with the Joint Research Center, providing the scientific support of the Commission, with the relevant DGs within the Commission on the use of self-reflection data, not only at the individual level, but for more granular or system perspective. And this is, of course, we have to be careful, because we are talking about subjectivity, and self-reflection, as I was mentioning, is a very powerful tool, but requires some skills. So for me, it's important that, for example, CPD is also supporting the development of self-reflection skills. And there is a lot of literature in this respect, with a strong scientific basis, but also with practical tools to provide, to get used to use self-reflection practices. And of course, it's important that, so it happened, for example, that in one country, we made the self-reflection exercise, and we had a second round, because it's important to monitor. And the second round was providing less performance, let's say, to some extent. But this is normal, because the more I reflect, the more I realize that I'm not perfect at all. I have to improve. Another important element is about self-data analysis and the activation for change. So, and here I'm really looking to the role of national stakeholders. Okay, so national stakeholders and primarily the public policies, but also the other stakeholders, employer association, expert, researchers, should be networked. We should have it was mentioned in previous intervention. So this is about the enabling ecosystem. We peer learn a lot. Peer learning is quite effective to share good practices, to share how did you do this in this context. And if we have an exchange, our mind is really open and listening because it's specific to solve the problem that I have. So that's why it's very important the enabling ecosystem that the national stakeholders has to provide in order to support the networking and peer learning. International organizations such as ETF, it's really supporting these selfie tools, for example, in the reference framework behind, as a reference. But this is and to have common references also for regional cooperation, for example. And here on the right side, I put an hackathon. In Azerbaijan, we recently promoted selfie. It was quite successful. This year, we are working in Armenia, for example, in other countries. And the hackathon, for example, is not for granted. It's a bit complex, but it's about problem solving, about challenges. So if we group schools that has prioritized a specific area of improvement, the system stakeholders, the national stakeholder has to support these events, this kind of group events. Another important element. What a selfie is good because it has a stronger scientific basis. This is very important. Self-reflection need guiding questions, need a framework where you are guided into the process. So we, as it was right told before, it's important that teachers has a support, schools to develop the digital capacity has a support in this respect. So the selfie tools are based on conceptual framework that has a solid scientific basis. And here I'm referring to decomp.org, that is the conceptual framework behind the selfie for digital capacity of schools. While for selfie for teacher, there is another framework which is called decomp.edu. Here, I'm not going to enter into the details of the conceptual framework, of course, but please note that there is professional engagement as the first competence area. And to here, we are looking to reflective practice that I was mentioning, but to what extent CPD is taking on board the new opportunity offered by digital to deliver more effective, more tailored CPD's initiative. So it's this is just to give another important properties is the progression model. Selfie for Teachers is including a progression model. So I participated into the design of these frameworks and tools. And they are, for example, this is the proficiency progression model for the languages in EU for the Europass. So
Alessandro, sorry.
Yes.
Can we stop for a moment to see maybe if we have questions, comments, because
Okay.
it's very, very rich as a presentation. And I think that we need some time to digest. Is it okay for you?
It is okay. There was just a two slide afterwards, but we can start up here as you prefer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Alessandro. So with the wealth of, okay, we already have one question here. So with all the wealth of information that we have now received from Agnes, from Alessandro, I would like to open up for discussion. We have 15 minutes for open discussion, and please write your questions or in the chat, or please raise your hand. And also I would like to encourage our colleagues using interpretation just to speak up, because we have interpretation. Thank you. So we have, yeah, please Lilith, and then we take from the chat.
Thank you for passing on the floor. And thank you very much for the rich presentations and very informative presentations. I represent Kavar State University, Armenia. And recently, EU-funded project has been launched, which is called T-Green, and it's entitled Transition to Green and Future-Oriented Graduate Programs. And all the partner country representatives are trying to understand the whole concept of the green-oriented education. And we're in a stage, in a first initial stage of implementing the project. And this is very important to have a good understanding of the whole concept. For this purpose, I would like to address the question to those who have a rich practice in this domain. This is a conventionally new phenomenon in the Armenian reality, but of course, we have witnessed a few European representatives where the green education is a common practice. So my question would be, could you please comment on what is the most important step to be taken in the process of transition from the traditional style of academic programs, curricula, etc., more green-oriented ones? How the reprofiling process takes place, and what is the most important aspect and steps to be taken in the whole process? If everything is clear, if I was clear enough, please let me know. If not, I will come out more.
Yes, thank you. And I would also take a question from Alessia, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. I have a question for Christina, because during the discussion, it came out that for this twin transition, and especially for the green transition, the approach and the attitude of the VAT teachers is very important. And I think that this is also very much linked to a type of inclusive learning that also includes social emotional skills. So not only a strict knowledge-based type of learning. And I would like to know what does the Swedish presidency think about that? So whether this change of mindset of VAT teachers is linked to this type of inclusive learning, and whether it could facilitate this twin transition and the green transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessia. Now going back to Lilith's question, now where should we start? What do you think, Alessandro? Where should the change start?
Let's say for me, of course, for the green transition, maybe other colleagues may have a specific intervention. I think that for concerning how to start is a good start could be really at school level to have a moment to reflect on these practices, on how we how this aspect could be faced and where to start from. So it's very important to be very concrete and of course, for the digital transition, there is already Selfie, for example, that is guiding in this process. I'm pretty sure that through Creta and other tools, it's possible to move a discussion within the school in order to really move concretely on the way the school is working. So it's a collective self-reflection could be a very good starting point. And of course, as well for the curriculum, there is in EU the concept of key competencies, and it's very important to highlight that even for vocational education and training, this concept is very important to ensure that transversal elements such as the green skills are properly delivered, and for all the students. That would be my my advice in this respect.
Excellent.
I would maybe like to add a bit from the green perspective from Greta, our findings there, if I may. Is that okay, Leah?
Yes, please go ahead, Susanna.
Because I would maybe give a provocative answer saying, just do it. It's actually just get things started. because what we have learned from Greta is there's so many things happening really at the grassroots level of schools. It's about extracurricular activities. It's about having fire souls of teachers just getting out there, working with the students, greening up their activities, what they do, not necessarily wrapped in a formal training program. That was one of the points I had, that things are moving so fast, and actually I would even state also a bit provocatively that the VET system itself is a barrier for the greening, because the national system is lagging behind of having the standards ready, giving the directions on what should be in the curricula. So it's about getting in there, getting started. And other thing we found in our Green Vet partnership through our peer reviews is that many schools, they don't follow a specific strategy. It's not that they sit down, write a strategy, and then it's followed. Many things are happening at the same time. This is what we saw in applying our whole institutional approach. Actually, I came in with the precondition or thinking that first the strategy and then implementation of things, but that's not really happening. It's about many different things, greening up campus, maybe having some other activities here and there on training programs. So I'm getting back to my answer, just get started and learning, because using a bit from Julian this morning, we are in a transition to transition, and it's really a bit of trying together with the important stakeholders.
Thank you,
I hope
Susanne.
this is helpful.
Thank you, Susanne. May I ask Christina to respond to Alessia and then take also Agnes?
I would just, Alessia, could you repeat some of, because I know you talked about the attitudes, but I don't remember if it was focused on teachers or students. Could you just reiterate what you...
Yeah, sure. So my question was whether this, as we said, that this approach and the attitude of VET teachers is important, whether if we combine this with the type of inclusive learning that also includes social-emotional skills, and so also a whole school approach, whether this could facilitate the twin transition and especially the green transition. I don't know if it's much clear now or...
Yeah, my short answer is yes. I think it is. I think, as was already mentioned by several, it's not only about the knowledge, and even if when we talk about it in the sense of what should be included in teaching, that is both about attitudes and knowledge. I think it also counts when we're working with professional development. It's not only about transmitting the knowledge, but it's also about discussing among teachers, among VET teachers and other teachers, issues about attitudes and how we do. So I think you cannot take one thing from another. Both aspects are important at all levels, I think, of the development.
Thank you, Christina. And now over to Agnes.
Yes, I would like to reply to Lilith's question, because I think in my presentation it was quite clear that my position is it's not about changing the study programs alone, but also changing the whole institutional management. And I know that, for example, in Spain, universities are already measuring the carbon emission of the buildings. And also, for example, in France, in policy level, the Sustainability and Social Responsibility Action Plan was recently developed, which links directly to education. And now it is mandatory for higher education institutions to propose specific action plans on ecological transitions. And newly recruited higher education administrative staff and researchers and academics, they need to have a compulsory training on sustainability. So really, I think in order to develop all of this, a collaborative atmosphere is important to bring together the institutional management in higher education, rectors, professors, administration staff and students, in vocational education, school leaders, vocational trainers, teachers and students and parents, to really set up a strategy for the whole institution and to try to work on it. And it's not only about changing the curricula, but changing general management attitudes too and tools. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. We have one clarification question to Alessandro on selfie tool languages.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a comment from our colleague Lida on academic articles and reports on the green to analyze green jobs, and where it is really underlined the close cooperation between the sector for education and enterprises business, that it has to be hand in hand. So there's opportunity for...
Perhaps to answer to
Yes,
Alessandro,
exactly.
I would say just the tools that I mentioned in the presentation are multilingual tools. We missed the last slide that was giving exactly this information, but we can say orally, of course. Selfie is already in more than 40 languages. For example, has been translated in Azerbaijan last year. In Armenian is now under translation. And so this is basically and of course, if you are in a country where more languages are used, each individual participant can decide the language to use. So this is another important element. So to answer to Alessandro's question, I would say, of course, it's very important the language, how the questions, for example, are translated, and the quality of the translation. And this is something that it's a critical step, and it's well, let's say, implemented with Selfie. Of course, Lida highlighted a point that was already mentioned. Let's say, this is actually not only for the green jobs and green skills, but also for digital skills, especially for job-related digital skills. It's absolutely important to work with the employers and the other stakeholders that are relevant, because they know exactly what is necessary to do. But what is important to highlight, in my opinion, that vocational education and training, as Julian was mentioning at the very beginning, is for the employer, it's for the workplace, but not only anymore. So even the VET programs has to provide digital education. This is very important for a digital society. They are citizens as well, not only workers. So these are the two dimensions of the digital skills and green skills as well that we have to take into in consideration.
Thank you, Alessandro. Thank you very much. I cannot see any more questions, unfortunately, from in the chat or any more hands. So I think now it's time to wrap up, as we have reached the final session, conclusions. And in our final session, we would like to spend some time on what we have heard and spoken together today, and also think ahead about the possible future cooperation. To do that, we have here two colleagues who are leading us on the final session. We have Rossella Benedetti. She is head of International Department of the Italian Federation Unione Italiana del Lavoro. She is also vice president of ETU's Women's Committee, and she represents the European Parliament at the ETF Governing Board as observer. So please, Rossella, floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you also for all the interesting inputs that have been provided here today. Of course, we are dealing with a very, very broad subject, and cannot, unfortunately, we should be speaking more than that to develop all the aspects, and also to have let's say, these exchanges, this much welcome exchange between social partners, because today it is something important that is happening here, that is an exchange between the Commission, the European institutions, but also the trade unions and the practitioners on the ground. So I'm a teacher myself. I'm representing here the European Trade Union Committee for Education, and as Agnes, I'm pretty much involved also at confederation level and in all the issues related to vocational education training and adult learning and equalities. Equalities been mentioned only a few times today, but they are very important for developing knowledge, skills, and competencies. What I'm going to focus on as conclusions, I've been hearing a lot about, and we've been discussing a lot about the importance of teachers and importance of professional development. And all that has been said is, in a way, is right, in a way. But what we have to do is to merge all the conclusions that we have come up today with, and try to find solutions in order to improve the system. Vocational education and training is, of course, very much linked to the labor market. It is something that is expanding and changing at a very fast pace in the last 20 years, also due to the digital innovation and the digital involved in many work procedures, work routines. But we have, I noticed that we have been talking about mostly about high level vocational education training, and we have not been discussing much about the vocational education training that is directed to low skilled people in the European Union, but also in the in the Western Balkans, in the Eastern Partnership countries, and all around the world. Which means that we have, of course, we have learned, we are learning all the time from the most developed countries, the countries where vocational educational training is performed at high level, that we can what are the needs of those systems, but we haven't learned what are the needs of the other systems where vocational education is welcoming all the time students with which have very low basic skills, and so and they have to be taught about subjects that should need higher skills. So this is an issue that we have. Are we ready? Are we ready to help students with which lack basic skills to get into green transition, digital transition, where some skills are needed, high skills are needed, literacy and numeracy skills are needed, they do not possess. This is one issue that we should discuss more. And of course, going back to professional development, what we need, I think we need to focus on the fact that has been brought up by my colleagues from the unions, that professional development should be performed, should be attended during service work time, paid time, that is, not in their free time, in their own personal time, at the expenses of personal life. That is one of the factors that drives people away from the teaching profession. And an issue has been raised that is most important, the attractiveness of the teaching profession. We have teacher shortages all around in the European Union, but also in other countries. And it's understandable. We get low salaries, we get working conditions which are not good. The general opinion is that teachers do nothing, so we are looked upon as I won't use a strong word as parasite, but as people that like to complain, but they complain for nothing, which is not true, because there isn't fair recognition of what the teacher's profession is now in these times, and especially in some sectors of the education system. And the big issue is time. I mean, this is a key word for teachers. Our profession needs time to reflect. We've been listening to this, the illustration, the presentation about the self-reflection tool on digital skills. So we need time to do that. And we cannot do that because we are all the time, we are working either in the classrooms or in preparing our lessons or in dealing with families or with the managers or other things. So we need time, and especially VET teachers need time because they need to go to workplaces. That's another thing that has been said and that is very important. Companies have to open up to teachers because teachers may lack two things. If they are coming from companies, they lack pedagogical skills. If they come from universities, most of the time they lack some professional knowledge because work routines and even machines and procedures are evolving at a very fast pace. So they need to get into the workplace and see what are the developments and go back to the students. So we cannot just say we take someone from a company and you come and teach. He lacks the pedagogical skills. If he's teaching to teenagers, there is some psychological aspect that they need to know to be able to teach to teenagers. If they're teaching to adults, they need to have a preparation training on andragogy because teaching to adults is very much different from teaching to teenagers. So time is of the essence, one might say. Time is needed and we do not have time. So that is another aspect that we should keep on discussing about. And then finally, I can say that again there is this continuing contrast between a labor market-driven envisaged model of education and an holistic human needs-driven one. So what VET should not be just responding to labor market. Even though it is important that it does respond to labor market needs. But people learning how to do a job, they also learn to be able to grow relations in the workplace. They need soft skills. A lot of companies ask for soft skills. And who is going to teach soft skills to adults or to teenagers enrolling in VET? That is teachers again. So we have to, we don't have to give up an holistic approach to that. And last but not least, teachers not only need to have good working conditions, but they need to be qualified teachers. not just experts in some kind of working procedures. So I don't have much time. I hope that was clear. I hope that I have succeeded in giving you some feedback about my impressions and what I'm taking back from this meeting. Thanks again to European Training Foundation for inviting us.
Thank you very much, Rossella. I would also like to give now floor to close the circle to our colleague Siria Taurelli. And Siria, she's ETF Senior Human Capital Development Expert and Coordinator of the ETF Governance and Quality Assurance activities. So please, Siria.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you all, and those who have organized this very interesting session, to the participants, the speakers, the audience. I'm really impressed by the richness of the exchange. I don't mean to summarize, that would be impossible, but there are so many important elements, and I would say one on top of all the others is that social dialogue play a role in the green and digital transitions. I mean, this was a question of, we started with the topic was about the role of the teachers and if there is a contribution of social dialogue in general to the twin transition. And I think the answer is clearly yes. And this is a simple but very, very important conclusion and statement. We would like to continue as ETF the discussions. This is too important, and I want to highlight, just to point to two directions we have in the governance team and governance project in ETF, which are, I think, very also related to the discussion on social dialogue. One is on resilience. We started a discussion and we had an expert exchange and also practitioners exchange on resilience. And I would say many of the things I heard today from the trade union representatives in Serbia, in Georgia, from Agnes, from the Swedish presidency, resonate a lot about the importance of say responsiveness and preparedness to change. We are through navigating through big changes due to climate crisis, due to digital transitions, and these are shocks. So these are kind of external shocks like digital and climate crisis, and we respond, the systems respond to this crisis by adapting, by learning. But I think we also have put in the picture another crisis highlighted today, the shortages of teachers, the lack of attractiveness to teachers, in particular in vocational education and training. And I think, to be fair, we have to put also this crisis somehow in the picture to be able to organize a response. And how to organize a response, this was also discussed a lot. And in terms of resilience, both approaches of, say, bottom-up experimenting, let it go, start at school level, at local level, and also progressive institutionalization of the adaptation, finding a new equilibrium are both important. And the pace is different. I mean, the acting now, like many of the speakers have said, you know, take initiative, just shape the future. It's absolutely important. And this is a short-term and quick type of reaction, but on a longer term pace, with a slower pace, we need institutionalization. We need to embed the changes into the system. And here social dialogue is absolutely crucial. So the quickness of fast reaction, but also the longer term view, you know, how to embed new changes, how, for example, build a new equilibrium in financing. This Agnes said very clearly. Are we okay with the financial allocation to education and training? Also others say the same. Do we have financial allocation for teacher training, for professional development, for developing IT skills in schools? I mean, Are we there? Perhaps not. This is my view and also ETF views, and we really need focus on social dialogue, also on you know, filling the gaps in teacher shortages, in allocating resources. So if we look from perspective of resilience, there is a long process ahead, but also, you know, capacity which is there. I mean, practice shows that there is capacity to find at local level here and there solutions. They are scattered at the moment, but we really need to build into an institutionalized and organized and structured system in the long term with simpler governance. Christina said it, avoid complexity, but build new structures that are maybe flexible and more adapted to the situation. So the first point was on resilience and how we can use this lens to continue our discussion. And the second is about partnerships. Also, this is something ETF works and will continue to work. And in our analysis of the partnership between public and private, also it was mentioned today, we need stakeholders engagement, we need social partners, we need dialogue with companies. What about the mentors in school, in companies, who will train them? So it's very important to extend the dialogue also beyond, I would say, to enrich the social dialogue, beyond the social dialogue of teachers and Ministry of Education, but to expand it to other actors. Non-formal education sometimes is provided by companies, by civil society organizations, at local level. So this view of partnerships in a more articulated manner, more complex, maybe more difficult, but it's very important to have it as an horizon. And again, also in the PPP, public-private partnership in the field of skills, we found all these elements of what's the motivation, what's the purpose of the partnership? Are we really focusing on the quality of skills rather than, you know, rent seeking or taking advantage of opportunistic attitude and so on? So I think these partnerships are also important. I believe we will continue in the context of ETF work in the GLAD network, and perhaps we can already anticipate, you know, new meeting, new discussions, new digging into, you know, engaging with other social partners, for example, at sector level. I mean, should teachers unions relate somehow to trade unions and also employers organization at sector level for the purpose of the green and digital transition? Perhaps, yes, this is a question, open question. I don't have the answer, but I would say it could be something interesting to explore. And also, you know, how to react quickly, the other point, but at the same time, at slower pace to rebuild an equilibrium, to reshape institutions, also to innovate social dialogue, perhaps. I don't know. Again, another open question to which I don't have answer. But I think that all these aspects are very much at the heart of our collaboration and cooperation with partner countries. And I look forward to continue in that direction. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. So finally, a very, very big thank you to all of you. Thank you for your contribution, for that you have participated in the discussions. And as a next step, we will draft a summary note with our today's discussion and share it, of course, together with all the presentations with all of you. So thank you very much. Have a good day.
Can we all switch on the camera and say hello for a photo? Well, what about this?
Hello.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.